Okay, what I'm going to show you now, or just review, is how to use an Arduino on Tinkercad. Just need to drag my Arduino onto my workspace. One thing I'll notice now is that this code button becomes relevant. By default, it will do this drag and drop code, so if you were teaching somebody who's younger, just doing a basic introduction, that may be a little bit easier. For this course, we're going to be using the text editor. So this will be what we use if we do get the chance to build on actual Arduinos in class. You'll need to use and be familiar with the Arduino IDE, which will be in this format for writing code. So right from the get-go, the basic code that's there for me is actually going to blink a built-in LED in my Arduino itself. Pin 13 refers to this pin here, but it also will blink that basic LED there. Just a quick review, anything that's in the void setup loop gets run one time. Anything that's in this section will get run over and over again while it's plugged in. So this one here will turn on with a digital write, pin 13 to high, and it'll then wait 1 second and then turn it to low. So it should blink that built-in LED, and you can see it just above my cursor there. Getting rid of that code for now, I'm going to drag in a breadboard so I can add a couple LEDs to the breadboard. Put a couple LEDs, and I'll resist just like we've been doing so far, using a resistor to terminate the LED to ground. Remembering that the slightly longer LED leg is the anode, which is power, and the shorter leg is cathode, which is ground. So again, this prepares both of those. Now that we're not using a power supply for our circuits, we need to remember to provide from our Arduino ground and 5 volts of power to our board. Again, it's always good, especially for more complex circuits that we're going to build later, to have power and ground on both sides of the board so I can access it on either side. Just a quick review or an introduction for my grade 11s, review for the grade 12s. These pins down here, the analog in, will be where I'm reading in an analog value. So anything that will have a range in value, temperature sensor, potentiometer or dial, photoresistor which read in light level, those ones will be plugged in down here to the analog input. So these can only read in a signal. Up here, my pins 2 through 13 are the only ones we're going to use in this course. Pins 0 and 1 we ignore for now. There will be a couple circuits, if we do get to build them on the actual Arduinos, a Bluetooth module, things like that will actually hook up to these pins to communicate. So we're going to focus on pins 2 through 13 for this activity. And again, these pins here, 2 through 13, can do digital either out or in. So if I'm writing to a digital device like an LED, turning it on and off, or I'm writing or reading from a digital source like a button, say, those can use any of those digital pins 2 through 13. You will notice on pin 3, 5, 6, 9, 10, and 11, those are the analog PWM pins. So if I'm doing any analog writing, so controlling an analog thing like a motor, and I don't want to just be able to turn the motor on or off, I want to be able to control the speed of the motor, or I want to dim an LED, those squiggly lines are the pins I can use for those analog outputs. So right now, I'm going to go back to my code. Now that I've wired up 2 pins, I'm going to wire one up to pin 2 and my second LEDs to pin 3. So I'm going to have to repeat this step twice. This essentially is just reminding the Arduino, especially for the pins that are up on the top here, whether it's going to be an output or an input. So I need to have 2 of these lines. One of those will be setting up pin 2 to be output, and then I'm also going to set up pin 3 to be output. What I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to set pin 2 to high and pin 3 to low, and then I'm going to set pin 2 to low and then pin 3 to high. So essentially what that should do is alternate flashing the 2 lights back and forth, because when pin 2 is high, pin 3 will be low, and then when I set pin 2 low, pin 3 will be high. So again, it should toggle my 2 LEDs back and forth, lighting one up at a time. Okay. The other thing, as I mentioned, with the PWM outputs, again, just a review for the grade 12s, but a new idea for the grade 11s. This squiggly line says that I can do now analog. So on pin 3, nothing changes in the pin mode because it's still going to be an output. I'm still going to be writing to that. But instead of simply staying high or low, for those I can switch this from digital to analog. And now all of a sudden I need to write a value anywhere between 0 and 255. But in this case, I just want to show you that I can dim it. So if I went, roughly 100 out of 255, and then I changed again this pin 3 rate to an analog rate, and I put that to 255, which is full. So essentially that'll be the same, but when it's off, instead of being completely off, I'm going to dim it slightly lower. So if I run my simulation again, and I focus on the green LED, really hard to see, but you can see that it's blinking from bright to dim rather than turning on and off like the digital comparison next to it. The other thing I want to remember is that I need to rename all my circuits. So I have them saved on my account. So again, that's just the basic outputs to LEDs. Again, both analog and digital are possible if I use the correct pins.